vibration. We may divide thinkers into those who think for themselves and those who think through others. The latter are the rule, and the former the exception. The first are original thinkers in a double sense, and egoists in the noble meaning of the word. It is from them only that the world learns wisdom. For only the light which we have kindled in ourselves can illuminate others. Schopenhauer. Action of some kind must be taken before any environment, whether peaceful or otherwise, can be created. Action requires thought, whether conscious or unconscious. And since thought is a byproduct of mind, it becomes clear that mind is the creative hub from which all activities originate. No inherent law governing the modern business world as it is currently organized is anticipated to be suspended or repealed by any force operating on the same plane. But it is axiomatic that a higher law may prevail over a lower one. The rule of gravity is not abolished by tree life. Rather, it is surmounted, causing the sap to ascend. The naturalist constantly builds power in the area of his brain designated for observation, because he spends a lot of time observing apparent things. As a result, he gains far more expertise and skill than his unobservant companion in recognizing what he sees and understanding an endless number of facts at a look. Through mental training, he has arrived at this facility. He purposefully decided to increase his capacity for observation. Therefore, he repeatedly used that specific skill while paying increasing attention to detail and focus. We now have the outcome: a man who is considerably above his companion in terms of observational knowledge. Or, on the other side, one can allow the delicate brain tissue to harden and ossify via steadfast inaction, making his entire existence barren and unproductive. Every concept has a propensity to materialize. Our wishes are seed thoughts that often germinate, grow, blossom, and produce fruit. These seeds are being sown daily. What will the crop yield? Each of us is a product of his previous ideas. We will eventually become what we are thinking about right now. The thoughts we generate or entertain shape our character, demeanor, and environment. Thought is self-seeking. The law of atomic affinity and the law of mental attraction are eerily similar. As real as magnetic, electric, or thermal currents are, so too are mental ones. The currents with which we are in accord attract to us. The ongoing operation of the mind creates lines of least resistance. The specific brain faculty that is being used affects how the brain functions. Constant mental training helps to build the mind's hidden strength. Every variation of its activity improves with repetition. There are several reasons to think about engaging in mental growth exercises. They entail the growth of the perceptual faculties, the development of the emotions, the stimulation of the imagination, the symmetrical unfolding of the intuitive faculty, which frequently forces or restricts choice without being able to provide a justification, and finally the cultivation of the mental power through the growth of the oral character. The greatest power of the mind rests on its exertion in moral channels. Hence, it is necessary that every conscious mental endeavor should entail a moral aim. The greatest man, stated Seneca, is he who chooses right with invincible determination. Continuity and force of action are both increased and modified by a mature moral conscience. In light of this, having a strong sense of symmetry requires being in good physical, mental, and moral health. This combination results in initiative, power, resolute force, and success. It will be discovered that nature is constantly attempting to express harmony in all things and is constantly working to bring about a harmonious adjustment for every conflict, every wound, and every challenge. As a result, when thought is harmonious, nature starts to create the physical conditions that must be present in order to create an environment that is harmonious. What becomes impossible if we realize that the mind is the greatest source of creativity? Can't we see why desire needs to be nurtured, managed, and guided in our lives and destinies if want is the great creative energy? People with a string mentality, who rule others around them, and frequently those who are far away from them, actually emit powerful currents that, when they come into contact with other people's thoughts, cause those people's wishes to align with the strong individual's thinking. This ability is evidently present in the great men's masters. Their influence is felt far and wide, and they successfully secure others' cooperation with their wishes by making them want to do so. This is how males with strong desires and imagination can and do direct the thoughts of others in the direction they desire. No man has ever been made without the innate ability to help himself. The personality that is aware of its own moral and intellectual dominance will emerge. Today's starving world longs for this truth. All have the capacity to make use of a dormant intellectual bravery that sharply discerns and a moral courage that boldly undertakes. Every person have a divine potential. Even though we are aware that the sun is merely appearing to move, we nonetheless refer to it as rising and setting. The world appears to be stationary to our senses, but we know it is fast rotating. Although we refer to a bell as a sounding body, all it is capable of doing is causing air vibrations. A sound is perceived in the mind when these vibrations occur 16 times per second. The mind is capable of perceiving vibrations up to 38,000 times every second. Beyond this point, there is once more complete quiet to confirm that the sound is not coming from the bell. We create it in our minds. We refer to the sun as giving light and even think of it in that way. But in reality, all it is doing is releasing energy that causes the ether to vibrate at a rate of 400 trillion times per second, creating what are known as light waves. This means that the only light that exists is the sensation these waves' motion causes in the mind. While we may refer to things like a rose as red, grass as green, or the sky as blue, we know that these colors only exist in our minds and are the sensations we experience as a result of the vibrations of light. As the number of vibrations increases, the light changes in color, and each change in color is caused by shorter and more rapid vibrations. We no longer see light when the vibrations are below 400 trillion vibrations per second. Instead, we feel heat. As a result, we now understand that appearances only exist for us in our awareness. Even time and space are destroyed, with time only existing as the sense of succession, and the past and future existing only in the mind in relation to the present. Therefore, we are aware that one principle ultimately regulates and controls all of existence. Every atom is eternally conserved, thus anything that is given up will inevitably be given back somewhere. It is indestructible and just exists to be used. It can only go in places where it is needed and attracted. It is up to us to decide our rate of growth and the level of harmony we will express, since we can only get what we can offer, and we can only give to those who can accept. We only benefit from the laws that govern our daily lives. These rules are unchangeable, and we are powerless to stop them from working. Although all the vast, everlasting energies operate in solemn silence, we have the ability to align ourselves with them, and therefore manifest a life of comparatively tremendous calm and happiness. Obstacles, difficulties, and discords show that we are either withholding what we no longer need, or refusing to embrace what we need. Growth is achieved by exchanging the old for the new, the good for the better. This exchange is conditional or reciprocal, since each of us is a complete mental being, which makes it possible for us to receive only in proportion to how much we are able to offer. If we stubbornly hold on to what we have, we cannot get what we need. Only things that might be advantageous to us are brought to us by the principle of attraction. As we begin to understand the reason behind the things we draw, we are able to consciously regulate our circumstances and only take away from each experience what we need for our further development. The level of harmony or enjoyment we experience depends on our capacity to do this. As we ascend to higher altitudes and gain wider perspectives, our capacity to appropriate what we need for growth grows as well. The better we are at knowing what we need, the more certain we may be that we will be able to recognize it, draw it to us, and absorb it. Other than what is required for our development, nothing may reach us. Every circumstance and encounter we have is for our good. Until we learn from them and glean the fundamentals of further progress from them, difficulties and hurdles will continue to arise. Mathematically speaking, it is true that we harvest what we sow. To the extent that we put up the effort necessary to go through our challenges, we permanently strengthen ourselves. We must exert the greatest amount of attraction toward what is completely in line with ourselves in order to meet the unstoppable demands of growth. The best way to achieve our optimum level of satisfaction is to comprehend natural rules and actively cooperate with them. The paralyzing ideas that we receive from the primitive thinking of the race, and that are accepted and followed without question, frequently bind our mental faculties. We are constantly fed the impressions of fear, concern, incapacity, and inadequacy. These are good enough explanations on their own for why men do so little, and why many people's lives are so devoid of accomplishments, despite the fact that they constantly possess potential that only needs to be liberated by appreciation and genuine aspiration to blossom into true greatness. Even more than men, women have experienced these issues. This is true both because the torrent of oppressive and negative thoughts has been directed more specifically at them, and because of their finer susceptibilities, which make them more susceptible to thought vibrations from other minds. However, it is being defeated. When she reached levels of delicate sympathy and leadership prowess in the Crimea that were previously unheard of among women, Florence Nightingale overcame it. The leader of the Red Cross, Clara Barton, overcome it when she carried out a similar task in the Union armies. Jenny Lind conquered it by demonstrating her capacity to command large financial rewards, while also satisfying her nature's intense need and rising to the top of her day's musical art. And there is a vast list of women who have achieved the highest literary, theatrical, artistic, and sociological achievements, including singers, philanthropists, writers, and actors. Both men and women are starting to think for themselves. They have some idea of their potential now that they are awake. If there are any secrets in life, they must be revealed according to their demands. Never before has the power and influence of thinking undergone such a thorough and comprehensive analysis. The tremendous reality that thought is the universal substance, the foundation of all things, has just recently become clear to a select few seers, but it has never previously reached the consciousness of the majority of people. Many minds are currently working to give this great fact a clear expression. Since light and sound are really varying intensities of motion, as modern science has taught us, we have learned about forces within man that were previously unimaginable. The new century has begun, and as man stands in its light, he now perceives part of the grandeur and scope of life's significance. That life has the seed of endless potential. One is persuaded that there are no limits to what man is capable of doing, and that setting such limits would be unimaginable. Standing at this height, he discovers that the infinite energy of which he is a part can provide him with fresh power. Some men appear to be drawn to success, riches, power, and achievement with little deliberate effort. Others succeed after considerable struggle, yet others never quite achieve their goals, objectives, and ideals. What causes this? Why should some men achieve their goals with ease, while others do so slowly or not at all? Physical factors are impossible, since otherwise, the most physically ideal guys would also be the most successful. Therefore, the distinction must be mental, must be in the mind. Thus, the mind must be the driving force behind creativity, and the only thing that separates men. Therefore, the mind is what allows man to transcend his environment, as well as any other roadblocks. The impact of the creative force of thinking will appear to be amazing once it is completely grasped. But without adequate application, diligence, and concentration, such results cannot be obtained. The laws that control the mental and spiritual worlds are just as unchanging and unbreakable as those that regulate the physical world. Therefore, it is essential to be aware of the law and to abide by it in order to achieve the intended outcomes. It will be discovered that following the law exactly will always generate the desired outcome. We are said to reside in the universal ether by scientists. This has no inherent form, but it is malleable and takes on shape around, inside of, and outside of us in response to our thought and word. It is activated by the thoughts we have. Then, what we have spoken or thought becomes objectively manifest to us. The law governs thought. We have not demonstrated more trust because we do not comprehend. We do not comprehend how everything operates precisely in accordance with established law, The law of mind is just as unambiguous as the laws of mathematics, electricity, and gravitation. We will comprehend the value of having a working understanding of the rules of thought once we start to recognize that pleasure, health, success, prosperity, and every other condition or environment are results, and that these results are formed by thinking, either consciously or unconsciously. The best that life has to offer is at the disposal of those who become mindful of the power of thought. They acquire higher-order substantial objects, and these sublime realities are created in such a way that they can be rendered physical elements of daily life. They acknowledge the existence of a higher power and maintain that power active at all times. Since this strength is infinite and unbounded, it carries them from victory to victory. Enemies become friends, conditions are overcome, elements are adjusted, and fate is defeated. These seemingly insurmountable obstacles are overcome. There is an endless supply, and we can shape the demand in any way we like. This is supply and demand in the mind. Our thoughts shape our situations and environment. Perhaps we have been unintentionally producing these circumstances. If things are not satisfying, the solution is to deliberately change our mental attitude and watch as our surroundings change to reflect the new mental state. This is not unusual or paranormal in any way. Simply put, it is the law of being. Thoughts that become ingrained in the mind will undoubtedly bear fruit that is similar to them. We must first change ourselves if we are to alter our circumstances, since even the best schemer cannot gather grapes of thorns or figs of thistles. The first things to change will be our thoughts and desires. Being unaware of the rules of vibration is equivalent to watching a kid play with fire or a grown man manipulate potent substances without understanding their properties. This holds true for everyone because the mind is the single greatest cause of all conditions in men's and women's lives. Naturally, the mind is just as capable of producing unfavorable situations as it is positive ones, and we produce these conditions by imagining any form of deficiency, restriction, or conflict, whether consciously or unintentionally. Many people routinely engage in this without even realizing it. Each and every rule, including this one, has no regard for the rights of individuals. Instead, they operate continuously and ruthlessly to give each person what they have created. What a man sows, he will likewise reap, in other words. According to Arthur Brisbane, thought and its work include all the achievements of man. Spirit and mind can be compared to the musician's brilliance and the sound produced by the instrument. The brain of a man is to the spirit that inspires thought what the instrument is to the musician. No matter how talented a musician, genius must rely on the instrument that allows it to manifest in the physical world through sound waves created in the material atmosphere, stimulating the brain's auditory nerves. If you give Paderewski an out-of-tune piano, all he can produce is discord and a lack of harmony. Or give Paganini, the best violinist who has ever lived, a violin that is out of tune, and despite the musician's talent, you will only hear repulsive, unpleasant sounds. The proper instruments are necessary for expressing the mood of music. The right brain is necessary for the expression of the spirit that motivates thought, the spirit of man. The outcome of an out-of-tune instrument is more unappealing the more complex and finely developed the instrument is. When it comes to humans, an out-of-tune, highly developed brain is much more painful and shocking than when it comes to a person with a mind that is, in comparison, weak and basic. Many people live and pass away without ever giving the spirit a second thought, since our minds are so used to dealing with the abstract. We spend so much time in the material world, and inanimate items have such significant value for us. The only actual thing in the universe, however, is the spirit. And thought, acting through a more or less flawed human being, is the expression of spirit. Bring yourself to consider the nature and enigmatic power of spirit for a while. Nothing is more exciting, fascinating, or perplexing than this thought. Consider the Niagara Falls with their immense power, the enormous moving machinery, the lit towns, the burning streets, and the moving cars, all of which are allegedly caused by the power of Niagara. However, it is not so much because of that power in reality, as it is because of the spirit embodied in human cognition. The spirit was what controlled Niagara. Spirit was responsible for spreading the fall's power to far-off cities. However, that spirit has no size, weight, color, taste, or smell. If you ask a guy, "What is the spirit?" he will have to respond, "It is nothing," as it has no physical form and cannot be seen or felt. He must nevertheless respond that the spirit is everything as well. We can only view the world as it is because we see it through spiritual eyes. The picture is captured by the optic nerve, sent to the brain, and then seen by the spirit. The first ship to arrive in America was brought by the spirit acting on the mind of Christopher Columbus, and via him, on others. The steady rise of man from his earlier state of savagery to his current relative level of civilization is the result of the spirit acting and expressing itself via the thought of brains that are more and more highly developed. And that same spirit will create true harmony on this planet in eras to come, with minds that are far more advanced than any we can currently imagine. Yet you are aware that there is a spirit, that it is you, and that without it, there would be nothing in this life. You would be no different from one of the stones in the field or some of the dummies that the tailor places in front of his shop. Without this spirit, which gives you life, helps you get back up when you fall, inspires you in success, and comforts you in failure and misfortune. Compare how you perceive the spirit and the physical world to the great painter's talent and the tasks that the painter is required to complete. In Michelangelo's spirit, every statue, painting, and cathedral that he produced previously existed. However, the spirit was unable to be satisfied in that state. It had to picture itself. It had to see how it had been made. Only until the soul sees a reflection of itself in the physical world does it truly come to life. The spirit of a woman contains all the maternal love, but it only truly exists when the mother takes the child in her arms and sees the being she loves and made in the flesh and blood. The greatest men have all of their accomplishments hidden up within of them from the beginning, but the spirit of such persons can only come to full manifestation when the work was made by the spirit, acting through the brain and expressing itself through thought. We are aware that all worthwhile effort is the outcome of sound reasoning. When we understand that thought is the very expression of the spirit, we are moved by a sense of obligation to give that spirit the best expression of which we are capable, as well as the best opportunity possible, while it resides in imperfect bodies and communicates through imperfect minds like the ones we have. Realizing that humans are destined to develop tools within their own physical bodies, capable of accurately interpreting the spirit that animates us as we progress through the generations and become less animal and more spiritual, is inspiring. From generation to generation, people get better. We are aware of this. Fathers and mothers' love for one another and for their children is what has caused the improvement. 100,000 years ago, this race of ours was composed of animal-like beings with big, protruding jaws, enormous teeth, short foreheads, and horrible-shaped bodies. Over the centuries, humans have undergone gradual alteration. The prognathous visage of man has grown fatter, as the brutish has gradually vanished. The jaw has recessed, the forehead has protruded, and gradually, thanks to the passion and perseverance of women, we are building a brain that will eventually allow spirit to be expressed in a respectable and acceptable manner behind the forehead. In the same way that a musician's genius and the sound you hear when his music is played are one and the same, spirit and thought are also one. In music, the sound embodies and interprets the spirit of the performer. And the orchestra, the violin, or the keyboard are all factors in the interpretation's precision. When the instruments are out of tune, you don't hear the musician's skill. Rather, you hear a misconception. There is currently very little harmony, since most of our human brains are out of tune and incapable of expressing anything other than the tiniest, most fleeting representation of actual spiritual life. This world, our little corner of the cosmos, will be genuinely peaceful when the cosmic spirit, in which every one of us is a conscious atom, speaks clearly via the perfected intellect of man and is immediately obeyed. This cosmic spirit has the ability to work through another person's mind which it regularly does. Many men appear to be working very hard, when in fact another guy, another mind, is actually doing the hard labor while the other man is invisible in the task. Any man working at any type of job, whether a salesman, editor, floor walker, engineer, or architect, may appear to be doing something fantastic, but he is not fully handling it. The work is being done by an invisible force, such as another man, another brain, or possibly a small man with a large head who remains hidden. Every single one of us is propelled forward or propelled along by an unseen force. It can be the unseen man who generally works in the interior office. The lady at home may be leading by example and giving the male at work the motivation and authority that no one else can. It might be fatherly affection, which enables a man to provide for a kid what he is unable to do for himself. A father or mother who has long since passed away from this world is frequently the source of power. Their energy and inspiration continue and enable the son to do things in life that he would never have been able to on his own.